Hello and welcome to the Actual Magician's Bookshelf. Yes, I am an actual magician, and today I'm just going to be contemplating grave thoughts on initiation, death and rebirth. The concept of resurrection, the concept of death and rebirth in the mystery traditions in Western Esotericism. And this is entirely unscripted. I've just happened to find myself in a very atmospheric graveyard, so I don't have my fancy microphone today or gimbal or anything, but I did think I'd like the opportunity to talk, particularly as we approach Samhain and thinking about death and rebirth, particularly as it is in the Western mysteries and the initiatory system as well, so we can have a contemplation. Hello Tony, hello and welcome. This is the cemetery near the Leicester Hospital, near the medical centre and near the university, so it's very, very big, it's very atmospheric, particularly as we have the autumnal leaves at the moment. And I'm speaking around, I think sunset is in about an hour, so I'll probably have a talk for a little bit. I particularly wanted to talk about, I guess, hello Redwing, talk about the initiatory system. And did anyone see that squirrel run across there? See if we can find the squirrel. We'll play hunt the squirrel. Oh, it's up the tree there. It's going up the tree. So it's nice to be outdoors. Oh, there he is. Hello, squirrel. Oh, he's looking down at me. Ah, there he goes. Wow. Yeah, so actually we have a plaque here, a thing about the meadow and grassland, about the bumblebee, about managing the meadows for wildlife. We'll see if we can actually find some Freemasonic symbolism perhaps in the gravestones and so forth. It's very, very atmospheric here. So death and rebirth, as we know, take a great place in the Western mystery tradition. And in fact, that goes back all the way to ancient Greece, and before that, it goes all the way back to the ancient Egyptian mysteries. We have a wonderful, actually coming up, we have the wonderful, look at that. This is how we know that we are in a magical place. We have the ubiquitous crow on a gravestone there for us. And again, hopefully you can actually hear my voice over the wind. It's a very cold wind blowing across today. So there's a symbolic and actual crow, because with actual magic you end up with the symbology in your real life. Coming across. So we've already had our squirrel, our Ratatosk, the divine messenger, running up and down the tree of life. I was going to talk briefly about death and rebirth and the way Negredo works in alchemy, because I was just going to go and see if there was anything particular on that gravestone that the crow might have been giving us some symbol. There's a nice butterfly there, symbol of transformation, of course. Hey you. Oh, this is the death of someone who was 2 months old. Oh dear. Say hello to you. what does that say? No morning dawns or night cometh, but what we think of thee. I see, no morning dawns or night cometh, but what we think of thee. Oh, okay, there's the message from the raven, from the crow for today. Yeah, so this is Leicester in England. It's a big city in the East Midlands. I'm down here visiting my partner Charlotte. We're talking about the Magister, just to get that finished. Hopefully the Magister will be available in about 3 weeks' time. I'll be typesetting it, the final typesetting, in the next few days, and then sending it to print and then releasing it, which will be a sort of new re-release after 10 years. I was going to make some bigger alterations to it, but I decided that wasn't necessary, and we want to get on to the next 9 volumes. So there's going to be 10 volumes of that. So, oh, Redwing. So it has areas, your local cemetery has areas for bird and bat boxes and things like that. Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? Yeah. See, nature really doesn't know death, does it? It just knows transformation. It's human beings that mark its passing in some way or another and try and hold on to it in some sort of state of permanence. That's really what Samhain teaches us, what autumn teaches us, and what death and rebirth teaches, which is exactly as it was in the mystery schools in ancient Egypt, and then in the Greek mysteries. That's a bit spooky there. The initiate would be taken into a darkened chamber towards the end and be shown either a sheaf of wheat or a bright light and say the sun is at midnight, the sun is seen at midnight, and then whispered into their ear would be Osiris is a black god, which meant that Osiris, the god of death and rebirth, was actually a god of transformation, that the eternal life was existing at all time and that transformation was inevitable. There was no escape from it. There we have the symbol of the anchor, which people with the Lenormand will know is the symbol of hope in Christianity, symbol of faith to be anchored to. Oh, here's a nice rose cross. Oh, isn't that gorgeous? Now there's a proper rose cross. Look at that. And even the rose is a symbol of transformation. It's said in Rosicrucianism that we go to the rose through the cross and to the cross through the rose, which is symbolic of the death and rebirth of the Adeptus Minor, where you are literally placed into a tomb or placed on a cross. And that's really a symbol of matter. The cross there is a symbol of matter, the 4 elements, and attachment to it, a sense of beingness, existence, our manifest world as it arises in our relationship to whatever reality is. But the rose in the centre, this perfect rose, is symbolic of Tiferet, which is our awareness, and that transcends, a bit like the top of the pentagram. It forms a 5 into a 6, and it means it all symbolises, all of these symbols come back to the same thing, which is that when we work through our sense of apparent existence to the material world, that the material world is constantly changing. There is no such thing as some solid state world as we perceive it, because it's always changing. We have a linear sense of time passing, a sense of moving from one moment to another. And that is all illusionary. It's all completely a sensation arising in our awareness of the universe. But our awareness is permanent. It's something that is unchanging. It's something that isn't really fastened to reality in the same way that we think it is. And magic and occultism, to me, particularly the Western Esoteric in history system, are primarily to prove to ourselves in our lived experience that reality, that transcendental sense of awareness, of being outside of time, being inside of time, just understanding that we exist in a sense of immortality. I once wrote quite jokingly on an album cover for somebody that I was helping design that the secret of immortality is not to exist. And I don't mean that in a nihilistic way either, because actual awareness, actual existence is, as Alex is saying in the chat, it's all consciousness. I actually wrote, my teacher wrote a line saying it's all consciousness, and yeah, it was like a major revelation. And I also had a similar experience where I think I was quite stoned at the time, but it was the universe is inquiry, and I don't think I've changed my mind on that in about 35, 40 years since I wrote that. That the whole universe is an inquiry into itself, and that is where we get our sense of awareness, our sense of existence comes from that inquiry as to what is it that this is, what is possible, what can we do with it, what are we, who are we? And as we know, at the gateway of the mysteries, it was always written, know thyself. And in effect, that's not just for the candidate into the mysteries to be aware that there's a lesson about knowing yourself, like some sort of self-development or self-understanding or self-insight, but it's the universe saying, let me know myself through existence, through what happens, through what transpires. So it's an interesting area of the cemetery. It's very well laid out. The gravestones seem in far better condition. Actually, that does look like a Freemasonic handshake. Wouldn't surprise me. It could just be a symbol of marriage and partnership. Obviously, symbols are multivalent. They can mean many different things. It doesn't always have to be Freemasonic, just because it's about trouser legs or something. I just wanted to walk over to this angel. Oh, isn't that beautiful? There we go. Very much there a symbol of the angelic and the transience of time. Yes, Alex is saying, forgetting to remember the joy of remembering. In effect, I believe very much in the sense of metanoia, that metanoia is a sense of forgetfulness, but it's a forgetfulness, it's a loss of forgetfulness of the soul. It literally means meta and noia, a sort of transcendence of the mind. And in Christian mysticism, metanoia is seen as a sort of act of repentance. But in the Western Esoteric in history system, it's very much seen as a loss of forgetfulness of the soul, because we don't gain things in Western Esotericism, we constantly lose them. It's what I call a via negativa, a negative path, a way of dissolving the consciousness back into its original state, not adding more things into it. So all of the rituals, all of the workings, all of the insights are very much designed to remember our original state, which is always existing. It can't not be connected. It can't not be the case that we are real, that we are in reality, that existence is existence. As it's the meaning of ipsissimus, right at the top of the tree of life, the highest grade. It literally means existence is existence, or I am that I am. And it is that pure moment, that singular and eternal and ever-expanding sense of constant awareness, of being present. So, well, as Alex is saying again in the notes, the Greeks seem to have created the best operating system when it comes to human language. The thinker and philosopher Alfred Whitehead pointed out that we are all just footnotes of Plato, that it's hard-coded into our whole thinking, that sort of, to some extent, dualistic, but also very deep, profound way of thinking, and thinking about thinking, and just the way we understand ourselves, the way that's now being replicated in AI and things like that, the way it was replicated in computer circuit boards and so forth. We're constantly recreating this model that we have of our own self, of our own brain. And that was very much founded from the Hellenic traditions through ancient Egypt, and then through Greek philosophy, of course, codified it all. So, yeah, that's very much a limitation to some extent. It's what we learn in the grade that corresponds to Hod on the Tree of Life, the Practicus grade. We learn very much about the power of the mind, the way to operate it as an operating system, but also, more importantly, the limitations of that operating system, that it is entirely self-reflective. It can't do much more than consider itself in its own language. And there's very much a sense as we go up through the grades of the Tree of Life that we're constantly seeing things anew, and this is where the death and rebirth comes into the whole system, that in every grade we replicate each of the other grades. So there's a sense of, in each grade there's a particular Tifreth point where we get to the center of that grade, and then our previous sense of awareness is turned inside out all over again, and we come to some new fundamental initiatory re-measuring of the world, a re-consciousness of it, a re-visioning of it. And quite often it's a deeper sense, a more congruent sense, a more consistent sense of reality, and a more comprehensive one that applies across all things. So you can apply quite often initiatory teaching to politics, to social structures, to psychology, to anything, because we're constantly recovering or rediscovering, discovering, I'll clarify that, we are constantly discovering the truth, the deeper reality. So it always has to be more comprehensive, more congruent, and more consistent. And that's how we can tell when people are wandering off the path of Western Esotericism, the initiatory system in particular. There are so many temptations, so many dangers where we can wander off the path, and people get far more ensconced in their worldview. They become more niche, they become more expert, more practiced in just one particular thing. And as a result, they often become maybe even well known, well recognized for a particular thing or another. But quite often that's actually part of what's called the Black Brothers, the idea that Crowley had of the people who sort of build up their ego and then have to draw down on it and refocus onto it all of the time and drag other people into it as well, like sort of black. And quite often the path then becomes one where people get competitive about knowledge. They get the idea that you can progress in mystical, spiritual, magical systems by learning more, by gaining more, by buying more books, by practicing more techniques, by being initiated into higher grades or getting more certificates or whatever it might be. It's all just then using the information to, as I put it, decorate the walls of your cell rather than reading them as an escape manual and an escape out of the illusion into reality itself. And so there's really a sense that we have to constantly check ourselves, constantly go through death and rebirth and recognize that each state is only a transitory state until a permanent state, a deeper state, can actually be recognized. Because at the end of the day, this is where we end up. We end up here with all of the overgrowth, all of the memories lost, and therefore it's about finding the moment in the present. I sound very rambly, very philosophical there, but I think it is as simple as that. It's a sense of finding some sort of state now, in the here and now, and all of the work, all of the learning, all of the teaching is in part distraction, but it's also, it should be pointing the way. It should be actually reminding us to let go of attachment, let go of particularly in the Western Esoteric and History system, one of the main things I teach is to really work on necessity and need, that we have to be free of necessity. If we're driven by necessity, then we are slaves. As Aleister Crowley said, the slaves shall serve. There's a very symbolic holly here. Obviously we have in witchcraft, we have the constant death and rebirth cycle of the Oak King and the Holly King. So there's some, we have some holly. Let's go and place that somewhere appropriate, and then we can actually turn our day into a little bit of a ritual as well. We can have a sense of finding some place to place this. Perhaps as a reminder of death and rebirth and the constant cycle of things. I think I'm going to place it across the leaves here. Look how gorgeous these leaves are. You now have an altar there. There we go. We can place that there. Oh, say, when you're working magic, magic finds you. There is a perfectly cored half apple, a symbol of the underworld. The symbol of the underworld there. Isn't that perfect? It quite often happens on our streams here that we have no particular plan, but we always find that the magic finds us. I think when you're working at your magic, then you know, because if you're working magic, then the magic finds you. It says here, out of the depths have we cried to thee, O Lord. Out of the depths we have cried to thee, O Lord. There's a sense there of out of the depths of the apparent world that we are calling out to reality, and that reality will find us. in amongst all of the impermanence, obviously reality is always present. There's a sense of understanding that we are not trying to find something, we're trying to remember where we currently are, where we're currently present. Now here's a nice four pillars. If thou shouldst call to me to resign what most I prize, it ne'er was mine, only yield thee what is thine, thy will be done. What was I saying about necessity? If thou shouldst cause me to resign what most I prize, it never was mine, only yield thee that what is thine. And Gurdjieff said the same thing actually. Gurdjieff said that sacrifice, we can't really sacrifice, because if we're prepared to sacrifice something, then it was never ours to begin with. And as the Sufis say, you only possess what you wouldn't lose in a shipwreck. And I keep thinking that at the moment as I come to try and tidy up and sort out all of my books and things at the moment. I'm going through a big clearing process myself of disattachment to objects. And I keep reminding myself of the Sufis saying, you only truly possess what you wouldn't lose in a shipwreck. This is nice, this pillar here. Get it with the sun behind it. It's very nice. Yes, the speaking dead. The speaking dead. Which way shall we go round? Shall we go round this way? Sense of going around here. So we have the town, the city of Leicester over that way, as you can see. I think that building there is the top of the old gasworks or something. That nice tower. We're slowly approaching the sunset. We've got about 40 minutes, half an hour or so before sunset. Yeah, I think what we're going to do is just walk back up and walk back through the middle again. The feeling there'll be something for us there. Yeah, so yes, what were we going to talk about? We were going to talk about death and rebirth in the mysteries, but say a lot of the initiatory system, to me, it really hinges around this idea of resurrection, but it's a resurrection of what is present, not a resurrection into something different, something that it wasn't already there, that we're not adding to, but it's a process of dissolution. And we get that with Negrido, we get that with alchemy, that sense of a transformation of state. And quite often when people talk about death in the tarot as transformation, I don't think they really often think about what transformation is, that it's an entirely different state, but it's a state transformed, as in trans and form. It's the form of the existing thing that has changed, that it has now become something different, that nothing has been added, nothing has been taken away. And there's a real sense that death in Western Esotericism, in occultism, in magic, is a transformative state, that it's present and it just needs resurrecting, it needs rebirthing. And of course that happens every day with the sun. And why we have so many solar deities, and why the worship of the sun was so prominent in early culture, that every day we were exposed to something that was life-giving and life-affirming and enlightening in its literal sense, where we could see things around us, dying and then being reborn each day. And so all of that symbolism gets overlapped with Tifereth, Osiris, the Judgment card, the Death card, with Mithras, with Christ, of course, through the Christian mysteries, which are the most prominent mysteries that we have in Western society. But of course, we still practice the more ancient myth. So the Golden Dawn had a semi-Rosicrucian myth based on Freemasonic myth, based on Christian myth, which is itself based on older myth. So there's a real sense of a constant teaching, and the same teaching under different voices, different language, a sense of trying to find this transformative state. And we do that again through every act of magic. There's a nice mandala type pattern. And the entirety of the Tree of Life, the entirety of the tarot, the alchemical system in the Western Esoteric History system is really geared towards providing us a map and a operating system, a working system, a manual of reality. In the same way that inside the sarcophagi of ancient Egyptians was the Book of Coming Forth by Day, the sense of it being a map of life as well as death, and a sense of journeying. And also being tested. There is that sense in the history system that we go through tests, that we go through challenges, that we go through things that we have to overcome and work through, and more importantly, understand, actually use to understand our reality. And this is what I think is most important in the Western Esoteric History system, that we have questions. And that's why I always encourage questions in my teaching and in our books and even in our live streams and so forth, that it's by our questions we are known, it's by our questions we make progress. And more importantly, I think it's by our questions that we engage with the universe, which, as I mentioned to begin with, is, I believe, an act of inquiry into itself. And the possibilities of that inquiry are almost endless, because as you practice magic, you start to discover just how magical the universe is and how possible it is to enact magical work that seems totally atemporal, non-spatial, acausal, entirely unexplainable with the model that people tend to live by. And it's quite possible to live an entirely good and useful and exciting, interesting life, all of those good things, without ever inquiring into it too much. But that is not our work, and that is why this work is the great work. It's the work of inquiry into what reality actually is, what is possible for us to experience. And we do that every time we do a tarot reading. It's really important when you do a tarot reading, if you find that it is very accurate, that there's something about it that transcends time and space and any sort of connection that you have, any knowledge that you have, that then we have to ask ourselves, what does that mean? What does that mean about reality and how it works, how it's connected, how we are tapping into reality? Does it mean that time works in the way that we think? And all of these things are part of these sort of grave reflections, I guess, that we have when we're walking through a graveyard, because there's nothing that marks linear time and our own mortality and attachment more than a cemetery does. Each of these plots is a ode to lived memory and a reminder that there's a nice line by, or a verse by Longfellow that I first learnt in a Hawkwind song and then only later realised it was actually Longfellow, and it's "Lives of great men are sublime and reminders." Sorry, I'll start that again. Lives of great men are reminders we may make our lives sublime, and so departing leave behind us footprints in the sands of time. Well, if anyone's got any questions about the initiatory system, about death and rebirth, about immortality as it's seen in the great work, then drop a comment. Otherwise, I'll be closing off and warming my hands up over a coffee in a moment. There's a nice dove and roses there. So I've been walking through the cemetery in Leicester, a city in England, musing as we approach Samhain and as the autumn really has kicked in here in England, on the death and rebirth symbolism that's found throughout Western Esotericism. It's going to be in the 6th book of the Magister when we get to Tiferet, the 5th book. There'll be a lot more about death and rebirth and the initiatory system itself and the heart of that. Hello, Vivian. Okay, thank you. Well, the whole thing will be available, obviously, as a recording as well, once we are signed off in a moment. So I'm away from the Lake District at the moment, just for a few days, to work with Charlotte Wild on the finishing touches to the Magister, make sure we've got it in the way we want it, so I can start to do all of the page numbers. There's 500 pages, so I've got to be really sure we are happy with it before I reset all of the contents and the index, particularly the index. I only want to do that once. I've already done it once in the first edition of it 10 years ago. In a hurry to do that again because it's a load of work. So we just have to make sure that all of the pages are set for that. And hopefully that will be out in about 3 weeks' time, something like that, if it all goes according to plan. So thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me here. And again, I'll just recite that wonderful Longfellow poem. Lives of great men are reminders. We may make our lives sublime, and so departing leave behind us footprints in the sands of time. I hope you found this of interest, and I look forward to seeing you in future lives. We do have a membership part of this channel, and I've just finished a 10-hour Anetheon series on practical things you can do, little exercises you can do in Western Esotericism. I've given 10 different methods you can try, and I've made them as easy to try out for yourself and have fun experimenting and actually experience things from that, because I know that those things work from the last 45 years of testing them. So do join the channel if you would like to have access to that, and you'll get access to all 10 of them in one go. But I mention that for those who are members, and thank you very much for that, because when I get back I'll be doing a lot more of the sort of one-off series. I'm going to do one on lucid dreaming next, and that will be for members only as well. So thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good rest of the day and a good week ahead. And until next time, as ever, the worker is hidden in the workshop. Thanks a lot, Tony, for moderating. Thanks a lot for being here. Thanks everyone. Bye for now.